Hello, welcome to this fourth part of our Sims Online with the React 3 Fiber. A quick reminder of what we did so far. The first part was about setting up multiplayer with socketio. Then in the second part we learned how to set up a grid system to easily positionate our items into our three.js scene. And last week in the third part we set up a pathfinding system, so when user clicks somewhere, it detects if there are items on the way, try to avoid them to reach that position if it is possible. Today we will start our room builder by moving items over the grid. Let's start by cloning the third part to create the fourth. Then in the terminal, go to server folder, run yarn if it's not already done and a yarn dev. And in another terminal, go to the client, run yarn and yarn dev. You should have the link to open the project. When you open it, you can see where we stopped last time. So you can click anywhere on the grid, our character will move and avoid objects. If you click on an object, you can't move too, so your character won't move. Let's create a new mode. So instead of displaying our character, we will be able to click on object to take them and to be able to move them. Let's go to experience. We will create a new state. Later we will make it more global, but for now it's okay. Build mode and set build mode. It will be a state, and by default we will put ourselves into build mode. We want to avoid in build mode to display the characters, so we can check if we are not in build mode, then we can display our characters. Now we can move the camera because there is no character that is blocking our camera and the orbit control is available. For our drag and drop system, let's create a new state, drag the item, and we will store the current index of the item we are currently dragging. So by default it will be null. Then we will go to the item. So here we iterate through each item. Now let's go to our item and let's add some props. We want an onClick to be notified when an item is clicked. Is dragging to know if this item is currently dragged, so we will impact the way it appears. Let's implement it. So our primitive onClick, we will bind the onClick event, and the is dragging, we will first wait to have it implemented. Now let's go to our experience. We will handle on item the onClick. So here it is. Now we can see onClick. We will create a function. We will set drag item. It will be equal to, first we want to get the previous value of it. Now if we don't have a value, if it's null, then we will set the index as the new value. But if we already have a value, we want to keep it. We don't want the item to be selected if it's behind another, so it will avoid it. We also need to add is dragging. So to know if our item is dragged, we just need to check if the index is the same that our state. Now to visualize it, we can go to our item. We can see that the position here, we can just do if our item is dragging, then we will slightly put it above, or we will keep it at 0. If we reload, we click on an item, you can see it's slightly above the ground, but there are no ways to put it back. Now let's go back to our experience, and we want to enable the movement of the object once we are dragging it. We can keep all our logic here, it will be easier. We will need a drag position. Set drag position, and it will be a use state of null by default. Now to calculate that drag position, what we will do is we will go on the plane where we handle our character move, and we will add on pointer move. So when we are moving over the plane, we will need E, the event. If we are not in build mode, we won't do anything, so we don't use computation for nothing. And then we will calculate the new position where we are dragging currently. It will be vector3 to grid of our point, because we want the grid coordinates from the three.js point. We will compare it with the current value that we have in our state. So first, if we don't have a drag position, we will set it. Then we will check if our new position is either different on 0 on the x or on the y-axis. And if it's the case, Then we will set our drag position to new position. But then it went a bit too far because we don't want to emit any action. We can save, and now we should have our drag position. Let's try to log it. Console.log drag position. So now currently I have null, but now when I'm over the plane, I have the position on the grid where I'm currently. We will use it to move our item when we are dragging it. We can remove the log and add it, the drag position, to the item. Now we go to item, we can have our drag position, and we will need to use it. So first thing we want to do is to get rid of our previous position because we created a hook to handle the grid conversion. So let's use it. We have the function, it's in useGrid, and it's grid to vector 3. So instead, our position should be grid to vector 3 of grid position and the width and height of the item. And now that we have the drag position, we will check, do we have a drag position and are we dragging? So if we are dragging, then we will display either the drag position or the grid position if we don't have one. Otherwise, we are not dragging, we will automatically display the grid position of our item. Now, if we look at our scene, we can move, nothing happen. And if we click on an object, it will move and follow the cursor position to place our item. Now let's add when we click to drop the item. To handle that event, we need to go to experience. And on our plane, where is our plane? It should be here. We had an on character move. So we will rename it because it's not only character move now. Let's rename it on plane clicked. Okay, now let's go to our previously on character move. Let's name it on plane clicked. And this logic was only if we are not in build mode. Otherwise, first we will need to check if we are currently dragging an item. So if dragged item is not null, then we will need to add some condition to know if we can drop the item or not. But we can just say set dragged item to null. Now we can click on an item, click, and it will put back the item to the previous place. To update the items, instead of impacting the map, we will create another state. We will name it items. So it will be just for our own builder. We will do a use state on map.items. And now to render our map, which is here, we will check if we are in build mode, then we will render our items. Otherwise, we will render the items from our map. Now we can go back to our on plane clicked and set items. We will check the previous items we had and we will update it. So we will create new items. It will be our previous items. Then we will change our new items of dragged item. We will apply the grid position. It will be equal to vector 3 to grid of e.point. Then we return our new array with the updated item positions. Now we can take an item, move it, click and positionate it. But if we do other items, it works. We need to fix it. Let's create a new state that we will name canDrop. It will be false by default. Now to set the value of canDrop, we will use useEffect. And what will trigger our useEffect will be the drag position and the dragged item. And also when the items change. So the logic now of setting canDrop. If we are not dragging an item, we don't care about it. So we can just do return. Then what we need to have is our current item we are dragging. Because we are using its index, we need to get it from items. Let's get its width and its height based on the rotation. And let's create a temporary variable that we will name droppable. We will set it to true. So by default, we say, okay, we can drop that item to that position. And then we will check all the limits to say, no, we can't drop it here. The first one we want to check, and the easiest one, is check if item is in bounds. So if the drag position of 0 is below 0, or if it goes with its width and its position over the size of 0, then we can't drop it. We do the same for the y-axis, and now we know if our item is inbound or not. Before checking collision with other item, we will just do the set can drop, and to visualize it. Oh, I made a typo here. It's can drop and set can drop. Okay, let's add into item the fact that we know if we can drop the item or not. So we pass that state to our item. We add it into the item properties. What we would want to do is to display a little box below the object, green if we can drop and red if we can't. So let's wrap everything into a group. We can move the on click to the group. And now we will add a mesh only if we are dragging. If we are dragging, we will add a mesh with a box geometry with its width will be width divided by map.gridDivision to have the threejs coordinate, 0.2, and height divided by map.gridDivision. We will also need a mesh standard material. Well, even a basic one should be okay. The color, so can we drop? So if can drop, it will be green. Otherwise, it's red. We'll set a low opacity, so it's just an indicator and it's not affecting too much the experience. And transparent. We need to close it and it should be fine. And we also need to move the position to the group and not only the primitive. Let's give it a try. If we take that toilet, we can move other object, but here it thinks it's out, which is not correct. It should be there that it's out. I think it's here we need to multiply by map.gridDivision. Now if we take that toilet, we can go here, but now it's out of range. Now let's handle over other objects. It's pretty simple actually. Check if item is not colliding with other items. The first thing we want to do is if our item is walkable, or if it's a wall, we don't want to check the condition with other items. So we only do it if it's not walkable and if it's not a wall. Then we will iterate through each object. For each, we will have the other item and the index of that item. We want to ignore when it's our current item. So if index is equal to drag the item, we will just return. We don't want to check our own width and height. Then what we need to check if other items are wall or floor. Ignore wall and floor. If other item is walkable or if it's a wall, we will just return. And then we check item overlap. By the way, here it's easier if it's named other item. So we need the other width. It's the same logic. We need to apply the rotation and get either the 1 or 0 to get the width. Same for the other height. And now I count on you, ChatGPT, to do a magic move. Okay, so thank you, ChatGPT. So I just checked that our items are not overlapping. Let's give it a try. We can take the toilet. If we go over the bathtub, we can't, but here we can, which looks, it works correctly. Same applies here. If we take like the wall decoration, we can put it anywhere. Same here, looks nice. In our on-plane click logic, we will only set the new item if we can drop. But if we can't, we still want to unselect the object. If we move it, it works. If we take and move it somewhere we can't, it go back to the previous position. It's already quite nice. Let's add the item rotation, but first we will need a UI to switch to build mode and to be able to rotate when we are dragging an item. If you know me, you know I love Tailwind. I will install it, but it's optional. You can just keep the CSS framework you want. We need to install this Here it's in the client, yarn add --dev and paste. And then we need to run that command to init it in our project. Paste, okay. Now we need to change tailwind config.js. We copy this. We open tailwind config.js and we change content here. So it applies on the index and in our source file. Then in index.css, we need to add those lines. Index CSS on the top, paste, and we're good to go. We can run yarn dev and hide the terminal. Let's create a new component. We'll name it UI.jsx. Export const UI. We'll just return a div for now. We'll go to our app, and next to the canvas, we'll add our UI component. Now let's design our UI. To not spend a long time explaining to you the CSS, I already prepared it. It's just button with some style. The important parts are that I'm using pointer events known because it's on top of the canvas. So I don't want to catch all the events only on our buttons. So I set back a pointer events to auto on the container of our buttons. You can also see here that there are some inline SVGs, which are the button icons. They all come from hero icons, which is recommended on Tailwind documentation directly. You can copy SVG or JSX. And this is what the UI looks like. We have a builder mode to open it. The shop, we won't do it today, but it will be ready. A rotate when we are dragging an item, and a cancel to stop dragging it. Because our UI will need some more information coming from the canvas, or it provides it to the canvas, we will use .i, like we did previously, to create atoms and to have state available everywhere. We will set build mode atom is atom of false. So by default, we are not in build mode. We'll do the same for the shop. So we will be able to change it, even if we won't be able to shop yet. About the dragged item, we will store it also here to have the information. By default, it will be null. And we will also add the rotation, even if we didn't set it up right now. Dragged item rotation atom. It will be equal to 0. Now we have the atoms, we need to use them. So we have build mode, set build mode. It will be equal to use atom. Don't forget to import it. Build mode atom. Same for shop mode and set shop mode. Then dragged item and dragged item rotation. Now we have this. Let's add our button action to control it. So the back button, when we click on it, what we want it to do is, if we are currently in shop mode, we want to disable shop mode. And if we are not in shop mode, we want to leave the build mode. Then the build button, on click, we will just open the build mode. For the shop, on click, set shop mode to true. For the rotate button, we didn't set up anything about rotation yet, but the logic is quite simple. We will just set dragged item rotation. It will be equal to, if our item rotation is equal to 3, we will start again to 0. Otherwise, we will increase our item rotation. So we have 3. Sorry for the zoom. If we have 3, it's 0, or it's the position plus 1. The rotation, sorry, plus 1. And the cancel button, on click, it will just cancel the dragged item. So set dragged item to null. Now, it should be fine. But all buttons shouldn't be visible all the time. It depends on our current state. So the back button, it's only visible when we are either in build mode or in shop mode. If we are in build mode or in shop shop mode and that we are not dragging an item. So we will hide the back button while dragging. Then we can display that back button. And here it should be here. Yeah, the whole button. Okay. The build mode should be visible when we are not in build mode and we are not in shop mode. Then we can display that button. The shop button, it should be visible when we are in build mode and we are not in shop mode. And we are not dragging an item. Then we have the button. For the rotate button, the condition is if we are in build mode, if we are not in shop mode, and we are currently dragging an item. Maybe it's a bit overkill, some condition, because some states don't exist, but it's okay. And the cancel button, it's the same condition. So if we are in build mode and we are not in shop mode and we are not dragging an item, then we can cancel our current movement. Here, okay. Now our UI should be ready. We see that we have the build mode to open or back. I don't see the shop mode, which is weird. Why is that? Oh, it's because here I'm using the build mode atom. So it's shop mode atom. Okay, so now it's the normal mode. Now I can go back or open the shop. Okay, now we need to use it in our experience because currently it's a local state. Let's go back to experience. We have build mode. It was a state here, but it won't be anymore. It will be use atom of build mode atom from the UI. Now we see our character and we can switch to build mode and our character disappear, but the camera position isn't perfect. And can we go back to the experience? Yes, nice. We need to do the same for dragged item. Where is the declaration? It's a bit messy because it's a test project. It's not a real production case project. For tutorial purpose, I can't spend too much time by organizing and refactoring every time. Drag item, it's here. Use atom of drag item atom. Let's try it. If we go to build mode, we can pick an item and here it changed. We have the rotate button, but it does nothing because we don't react to it. Or we can cancel the move and our item go back to the position. Let's start by handling the rotation. So we have the drag position here. Now we'll need to duplicate it, dragged item rotation, set dragged item rotation, but do we need it? I don't know. Use item, dragged item rotation atom and import it. We'll need to apply it when we set the items. So new items of dragged item dot rotation is equal to dragged item rotation. And we also need to pass it to the item here, drag position. Let's name it drag rotation. It will be dragged item rotation. Go to item. Let's handle it. Drag rotation. We already have the logic of rotation here and it's a const. So let's rename it item rotation. And let's create a new variable, rotation. It will be equal to, if we are dragging, then we will use the drag rotation. If it's not the case, we will use the item rotation. Let's try it. Build mode, we pick an item, we rotate it, we put it. If we take another item, it will automatically rotate. So when we put the item, we should reset the drag rotation. Or it should be when we pick the item, maybe. Set dragged item. We should also set the drag rotation. It will be item.rotation. Or 0 if it's undefined, because not all items have a rotation. And we also need to do it only if we are in build mode. Now we can take items, rotate, and when we take other item, it has the correct rotation. Let's do two things to smoothen a bit the experience. When we open it, the camera position can be wrong. If we move the character, the camera position is randomly positioned. And also, when we are hovering the floor, the cursor is a pointer, while it should be on items. For example, here I can click on the item, but the cursor is wrong. Let's start by the camera. Let's get a reference to it. So const controls is equal to useRef and add it to the orbit controls. We can also set some boundaries, though the camera isn't in the wrong position, like minimum distance, we will put 5. Maximum distance, we'll set 20, so it cannot zoom in or out too much. Mean polar angle to 0 and max polar angle to math.pi on 2. So we can't go below the plane and see below our scene. But by doing this, we still can have an issue with the panning because we can go below even if the axis is set correctly. To avoid that, we can do screen space panning false. Now, if I try it to pan, it never goes below. It's coming further, closer, but never up or down. Okay, now let's position our camera when we are in build mode with a use effect. When we change the build mode, if we enter into build mode, we will simply do state.camera. Maybe we don't have the state now. No, so state is equal to use 3 and we'll get the state. State.camera.position.set, we set the default position we have on the app itself, so it's 8 everywhere, and controls.current.target.set 0, 0, 0. So our control will also target the default value. Now, wherever we go, when we switch to build mode, it will go here. Maybe it's not perfect, you want to put it in the center, you can adjust the values. Okay, now time for the cursor. Let's go to the item. We will need here to use cursor, and we need to check if we are hover an item or not. So we need to add some events. Are we hover or not? We create a new state. By default, it's false. So use cursor, it will be hover. And we also need to know if we are in build mode, because we only want to define this value here if we are currently in a drag and drop mode. So we need the build mode from the build mode atom. Need to import it. And here we don't want to set false. What we really want to do is, if we are in build mode, we use the hover value. And if it's not the case, we don't use false, we use undefined. So it's not applied at all. And now easily on the group, we need to set on pointer enter. We set hover to true. And on pointer leave, we set hover to false. Let's see now if we are over the plane or not, we have the cursor correctly. And if we are in build mode, we can go on the floor, it's not a pointer. And if we go on an item, even an item not over the plane, it's currently clickable. Perfect. Now, last thing we want to do is if we reload, we want to see our changes applied. So if a new user joined the server, it sees the items at the correct position. Let's start by the server. So go to index in our server. Let's go to the handlers. Let's add socket.on items update. We will take the new list of items and we will apply it to our map. So map.items will equal to items. Then what we will also do is generate a new position for all characters, because maybe they are somewhere they cannot be anymore. So for each character, what we do is character.path is equal to nothing. So we reset their movement, they are not moving anymore, and their position is equal to generate random position. We also need to emit to everyone that the map has been updated. What changed is the map, but also all the characters, so we will also give it. Maybe we could trigger 2 events, or have a better naming convention. But we are still missing an important thing, is to call updateGrid method, because our pathfinder won't work. It will be based on the previous object position. So we need to call updateGrid when we change the items. But before we only called updateGrid once and it was working correctly. But now we didn't reset the grid. So some previous items might take the place while they're not here anymore. What we need to do is just to iterate through each grid position and to reset it. So for let x is equal to 0, let y, so we iterate through each cell, and we set grid.set walkable at, and we will set true everywhere. So this is just a reset. Now our server should be ready and we don't need to touch it anymore. Well, for today. Just do a quick check that the server doesn't have crash. It looks nice. Let's go back to our experience and we need to emit the event that the map has been updated. We already have a use effect when build mode change. We can trigger it here. So if we are not anymore into build mode, we can do socket.emit items update and pass the new list of items. And because the items can change from the server, we also need to do that when we enter in build mode, we need to set the items to map of items or nothing if we don't have. It's because here items set. Here we were using the default value, but we were considering it never changed. But now it can change from the server, so we need to impact the changes into our items list. Now, last thing is to go to Socket Manager and handle those events. So what we have now is a new event named map update. On map update, it doesn't exist yet, but we will need to create it. And we create our function on map update. So the value we have are value.map. So we set our map with this and set characters to value.characters. I also noticed here a mistake with set characters. It should be value.characters. It didn't create bug because just after we had the onCharacters event that was triggered. Okay, so now what happens if we open build mode on one screen, we move the toilet and we kit it. We don't see the update on the second client here. Let's check if the names are correct. Map update, and in the server, I made map updated. Let's name it map update. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video. If it's the case, please hit the like button as it really helps the channel grow and be more visible to other React 3 Fiber lovers. Let me know in the comments what you'd like to see in the next parts of this tutorial and if you still want me to continue on this. I'm currently thinking about making the shop and a character customizer, maybe using a Ready Player Me avatar customizer, then a final episode with more shadows, lighting and effects. Do not forget to subscribe to not miss the upcoming videos coming next week. And in the meantime, you can watch this video tutorial available here.